Okay, we'll call to order this evening's meeting of the City Council, Tuesday, November 6th. City Clerk, please take the roll.
Mayor Brinkman.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Valdez.
Present.
Councilmember Cole.
Here.
Councilmember Driscoll.
Here.
Councilmember Elrod.
Here.
Councilmember Fay.
Here.
Councilmember Schlachter.
Present.
Will you please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
It's approved. So next item on our agenda is public comment. If you wish to address the council, please have signed in on the speaker's form. Each speaker will be limited to 3 minutes, and the City Council is not authorized by Colorado Open Meetings Law to discuss, comment, or take any action at this meeting on an issue raised by public comment that's not part of tonight's agenda. And the mayor may refer the matter to staff to obtain additional information and report back to council as appropriate. We do have 4 public hearings this evening, so if you intended to sign up for one of the public hearings, which are primarily related to the budget, then please sign up on the proper sheet for that so that we can get your comments in the record. The first is Martha Lyon.
Hello. Is that right? Good. Okay. Hi, I'd like to tell you about my neighborhood. I've lived in the Highline Crossing co-housing community for nearly 20 years. My husband and I raised our 2 daughters there. Because of our close-knit community, I've always felt very safe. We work on the upkeep of the property together. We celebrate life events together. We support each other in times of need. When my grown daughters come home, they want to see the neighbors, then catch up with the people who've watched them grow up and were part of their lives. It's a wonderful place to live. It's a place that Littleton can be proud of. When the city had a survey done about why Littleton residents like living here in Littleton, safety was one reason I gave. Now I don't feel as safe because of our new neighbors, Triple J Armory. I'm the head of the marketing team at Highline Crossing. Our team works to attract people who are interested in living in a co-housing community where we make an effort to be part of each other's lives. When people come for a tour of the community, they almost always remark on how peaceful and quiet it is. I'm afraid that peace and quiet that we've enjoyed for 2 decades is now in jeopardy because of our new neighbors, Triple J Armory. It was in early June that we were alerted to the fact that Triple J was planning on moving into the neighborhood. We found out that their business had experienced 3 smash-and-grab robberies in a year. We were concerned about that target moving into our neighborhood and the possibility of future violent robberies. It was at that time that they, in their own words, took a calculated risk and started work on their building without proper permits. It was not a good first impression. I have no reason to believe the owners of Triple J will not continue to take calculated risks. I'm here to ask you to hold them accountable. I understand they've been granted a permit for a shooting range, but have not yet paid for that permit. I would like to know that the city is sure they have not started work on the shooting range without the permit. I also ask that the council provide neighbors with a forum or task force for our concerns. When we hear gunshots, who do we call to make sure they are not violating the noise ordinance? Will there be increased police presence in our community to discourage the people interested in robbing gun stores? And can you at least make sure guns are safely locked away so that thieves can't simply smash and grab? This problem that we faced was avoidable. The City Council relied on South Park's restrictions, but South Park has no recourse. I'm asking that you take an active role in reviewing the zoning in our neighborhood. I'm concerned about what other businesses could move into our area. I'm concerned that the city will again grant permits to businesses to take away our security and peace and quiet. Please act in the interest of your city residents and constituents. Thank you.
Thank you. Jim Mascolo?
I'm Jim Mascolo, live in South Park. Given the course events have taken in South Park, it now seems relevant to list for the council our continuing concerns with the city administration's handling of this situation. We urge the council to follow up with its own investigation. First, there was no announcement of public hearings on such an important and controversial issue. Second, when the city was forced into a public meeting, it changed the rules at the very hour of the meeting, thus stifling citizen comments. Next, despite promises, most of the questions from that meeting that were submitted in writing have never been answered. Also, our call for a meeting about public safety with the police department has never been addressed. Also, no documents related to the permitting process were posted on the city's website until our board raised the issue with the city. Also, the city has allowed out-of-date zoning in the South Park area to remain in effect for 20 years. Also, the city is not requiring Triple J to lock up its guns. Also, the city has questionably grandfathered in the old parking regulations for this property. Also, building plans for dealing with noise and toxic substances are not being shared with citizens. Also, the Community Development Office amazingly told us that they do not review permits coming from a planned development zone. Also, the city facilitated the permitting process for Triple J by dividing the permit in two, even after Triple J had violated the city's building permit. Also, the city has ceased to cooperate and coordinate its permitting process with SPOA, making SPOA irrelevant. Also, the city has used the broadest interpretation of permittable use in our planned development area, which is not subject to challenge. Finally, it is not just these actions, but the entire culture of secrecy and hostility towards residents who oppose this project that must be investigated. From the legal discussions we've had, we've come to understand that some of the decisions the city made, particularly in the early goings, were not as clear-cut or inevitable as the city would perhaps like the council to believe. Perhaps there was a simple calculation: who's most likely to sue? And that question finally comes down to who has the deepest pockets. This is not governance. For community development to put a shooting range in the wrong building in the wrong place speaks to a deep systemic dysfunction. The council owes it to the citizens to investigate the process that allowed this and to issue a report. We implore the council to hold people accountable before more damage is done. In the Grove situation, the bad result was a project too big for its surroundings. This time, a situation is festering, which might result in much greater harm. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Rick Patterson?
Good evening. I'm also here to speak in regard to Triple J Armory. I live in South Park, and there, as you know, are residences, schools, churches, offices, and fringe retail in this area. My comments are about the city allowing a retail gun shop and a shooting range, inviting upwards of 500 plus members to be within 50 to 75 yards of my residence of my front door. This is not an issue of guns or of the Second Amendment. This is an issue of allowing a facility like this to be in the wrong location with no apparent concern for the safety of those who live, go to school, worship, and work in this area. The company has proven itself to be a bad neighbor as it has not followed the rules for permits for construction and built the interiors of their facility without a permit until you all temporarily shut them down. These are not things that you don't already know. They have had 3 violent break-ins in the past few years. They will be abusing the parking in our area according to South Park and the city regulations. We have a concern over not just the noise, but the amount of people and traffic that will be disrupting our neighborhood and the hours into the evening with their customers, cars, and trucks milling around what used to be a quiet and safe area to take a walk or to walk our pets in the evening. We understand that they legally have the right to be here, but sometimes government cannot always operate by the exact statement of law. Sometimes you, in this case, the City Council and the City of Littleton should have done what was right for the citizens in this area and worked with Triple J Armory to find an appropriate location for the retail gun shop and their shooting range, not allowing them in the middle of residents, schools, churches, and offices. We also understand that the city has not reviewed or revised zoning codes that would have prohibited this type of facility from being built in this type of neighborhood. Isn't it about time for you all to do that? It's too late for us, but it could be in time for someone else. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Pam Chapborn.
Good evening, Council. My name is Pam Chapborn. I live a block and a half from here. So I have similar concerns, but I live in a very different area. But let me bring up the October 9th study session, which disturbed me greatly. There's no excuse for the city to not be prepared for the inputs for the Pell. It is a fundamental management function. You can tell what information you need to flow into the next project and the next. In fact, the city has hired a project manager. We have a city manager. We pay them, and we pay the community development manager to develop these kinds of schedules. What is the flow of data that's needed to make the next decision? We've seen that in public works to build roads. Have we seen it in community development? I haven't, and I've been watching 8 years. So there's a failure here, and I don't want you to talk about that all evening, because Mayor, you did mention we could talk about that all evening. Don't talk about it all evening. I want an investigation. I would like you to hire someone outside the city to figure out what's wrong with our management ability. Why didn't we have this schedule? What can we do to prevent this from happening again? And you see it manifested in Triple J Armory. Clearly, gun shops weren't a good use. What we should be doing in community development, and it doesn't take much thought or consideration to figure this out, is you need to identify areas of the city that are under stress and look at the zoning in those areas. And all the other stuff that's been done is a waste of time, and it has diverted energy and attention from doing the right thing. Now, we have a crisis so self-defined by the council to get input to the Pell. I do not buy it. I think there are other ways to approach this. And no alternatives have been presented for that Bellevue, Santa Fe, and Prince Street area. This is appalling. You guys did this at the station area plan for the light rail station at Mineral. And you got a horrible public reaction, and you said, you know, we're not going to do that, we're going to do visioning. And then suddenly, we have a crisis, and now we have to invent a plan with a company that is not qualified. Their work experience does not justify what they're being called to do here. And there's something behind the scenes going on, which was mentioned openly at the meeting. There's developers and property owners who want to do things. Do they have rights above the rest of us? No, they do not. And it is your job, council. You are elected representatives of the city, and you represent the future residents too who cannot speak. You must represent everyone, and it's not happening. We need a failure analysis of what went wrong, and we need to fix it now. Thanks.
Thank you, Pam. Dave Lynch.
My name's Dave Lynch, and I live in South Park. Unfortunately, I have a much more serious problem. I have an issue with the zoning and code enforcement people. They want to come and plow down my house. I've met with my council person, Carol Fay, and she said she didn't know, she appreciated my time, and I don't know what to do. I've worked on it. When this problem started, Littleton Housing Authority had $5,000 of money, and the city interdepartment couldn't work together. Code couldn't work with the Housing Authority, and they decided to have Daphne Baca oversee this project, and her quote unquote, what the hell am I supposed to do? And she repeated that almost verbatim to another person that the city was trying to pull in and get to help me. And so in 2013, I would go and rake my leaves, cut my grass, mow and shovel my driveway. And if I was there more than 20 minutes, Littleton police would show up. Not one, but at least two, sometimes three. So I stopped doing other than 20 minutes worth of work. In 2000, and the city also sent me to jail because they violated my constitutional rights of attorney. And they said, well, you didn't meet our requirements. Well, I met with Daphne Baca. I said, what do you want me to do? And she said, I don't know. So almost weekly, I was in court. And she was waiting for them to do a mental health evaluation, which I said, oh, I would do. And I was told, well, you have to pay for it. I said, I can't pay for it. I'm not working. And legally, the city should have paid for it. And now I'm got this notice that they're going to demolish my house. I showed it to Miss Fay, and now I've got a second notice after working 3 months on my house with untold thousands of dollars, volunteer hours, and all of a sudden she says, well, you have no significance improvement. And she has all these numbers with no clarification on what she wants done. And people have seen it, and I was talking to a retired city employee, and they said, take it to the county. Thanks.
Thank you. Dan Radulovich.
Good evening. Dan Radulovich, 7000 South Gallup Street. So I'm just going to talk about a few things that came out of the short-term rental study session a couple weeks ago. First off, the draft that is, or the proposals you have for the draft are much more in line with what the rest of the region is implementing as far as short-term rentals go, as far as requiring primary residency in the 8 months of occupancy. It kind of harkens back to what short-term rentals actually are designed to be, which is to use the home that you live in to make a little bit of extra money. There is one topic, though, that seems to be consistently ignored, and I kind of find it odd that it's this topic. It's the safety topic. It was basically what drove the moratorium into place to begin with. It's remained largely unchanged since the original draft, where you have a list of required equipment, and the city reserves the right to come in and take a look at the equipment at any point. I believe that this should be treated like any other business where the public is expected to be or is housed, such as retail shops, restaurant, hotels, where there is a inspection beforehand and an inspection on an annual basis. I don't think I'm really asking for the world here. This is probably like a 10-minute inspection. It's to see that few detectors are in place, the extinguishers there. I'm fairly certain the reason this doesn't get talked about is it's mainly a manpower issue as far as the inspection department, people that do the inspections and the code enforcement go. It's kind of a bad excuse, just because the fact is those are the people who are going to be enforcing this ordinance to begin with, and if they can't find 10 minutes to come out and inspect the place to make sure it's safe to begin with, how can we be sure that they're going to do any enforcement? One of the things that didn't make it in that I liked was when Councilperson Elrod's suggestion, which is notifying neighbors and with that contact information as well. Pretty much every website out there recommends that you notify your neighbors before starting the short-term rentals. That's not a big secret, I don't think. Requiring them to notify the neighbors and give them the contact information, I think would actually head off a lot of problems right up front. Basically, I think the owners even would rather be contacted by a neighbor knowing that there's a problem there rather than have the cops called at the drop of a hat. It would also reduce non-emergency calls to begin with because they would be able to contact that person directly. Lastly, since I also have thrown out there a couple of times the possibility of neighborhoods having the ability to bring emergency revocation hearings. Just if enough neighbors get together, they have to have a hearing within, say, 30 days or whatever. It looks like the city's going to a complaint-driven enforcement system anyway, which means the neighbors are going to be doing the majority of the enforcement. They're going to be calling in and things of that sort. So there's really no reason not to let them bring the emergency revocation hearing as well. I do realize that's an enormous sword to give to a neighborhood, and I would definitely recommend, like, if there is a hearing and there's no findings, there's got to be a cooling off period of like at least 6 months. That way, there just aren't frivolous things being thrown at them. Once again, thank you for your time as always, and I hope everybody voted.
Thank you. Those are the names that I have signed up. Does anybody else care to speak this evening? Okay. Seeing no one, we will close the public comment and move to consent agenda. Consent agenda items can be adopted by a simple motion. All ordinances must be read by title prior to a vote. A vote on the motion, any consent agenda item may be removed at the request of a council member. Consent agenda. Ordinance 43 is an ordinance on first reading deleting Chapter 7 of Title 11, Capital Facility Impact Fee. You know, one moment. Excuse me, please. Would you guys come back in for a moment? I'm going to make an exception at this point. I jumped to consent agenda, and what I would like to do, and the mayor has this prerogative, most occasions we will respond to public comment either after the meeting in our council comments, or we'll ask staff to prepare some answers back to questions and comments that were brought up. But I've had a couple comments from council members regarding this particular issue with Triple J. And so I know that staff has prepared a document. The city attorneys worked quite hard on a document that was in our packet. I don't know if you've had a chance to read it, but it goes through in great detail some of the process. And I have asked the city manager and the city attorney if they, depending on what happened this evening, if they'd be willing to address some of the comments so that you could have some comments addressed prior to the end of the evening when you may not, be watching, and certainly as you are about to leave. So if you don't mind, council, if you'll indulge me on a change on the agenda, going back up to public comment and asking the city attorney first, if you don't mind addressing some of the comments that we've got this evening and some of what you addressed in your review of prior comments and questions and concerns.
Mayor, Council, I'd be pleased to do that. At the outset, let me indicate I have reviewed the entire public record file in this matter, some 500 pages that were provided as part of a public records request. So I have looked at all the documents literally from the very beginning. And I certainly appreciate concerns that have been expressed, but I think that there's some things that need to be, and my report to you details this in some specificity. All of the documents I've reviewed are public record. They are available through a public records request through the city clerk. And so I want to sort of take this chronologically from the beginning because I think there are several things that are important to note. First, prior to Triple J Armory, and I'm just going to refer to that as Triple J for purposes of this discussion tonight, entering into a contract to buy the property that it's now located at, there have been some questions raised about the role of the city. The fact is, the only approach to the city was in 2015. Triple J approached the city, as many, many entities do, with informal concepts to develop a different parcel that was vacant. And as we do with anybody who approaches us, we give them an informal meeting. We talk about general zoning development information. And we did the same here. It's something that cities routinely do. It's nothing unique, particularly to Littleton. It's just a normal practice. There was never any follow-up from Triple J regarding the vacant parcel, and at no time did the city provide any assistance to Triple J to facilitate locating this project in the subject location. Now, it's important to note, this particular project, it's located within a planned development district, which is basically a mixed-use type of zoning district. It allows you to sort of do different types of bubbles within the district. And in this case, in South Park, part of it is planned development residential, part of it's planned development industrial. Now, it's different from a traditional zoning district. A traditional zoning district has all the performance standards, all the uses, it's all in the code. Not the case with planned development. What happens is the applicant comes in and they submit a plan that itemizes the list of allowed uses and the standards. And the idea there is that the applicant can have more flexibility to develop this property than the traditional zoning code. And many developments, and South Park is no exception, has a separate owners association. That owners association, which is made up of the property owners, they enforce the codes, covenants, and restrictions that the developer places upon the property. The city has no legal authority to enforce those, only the developer does, because those are a contract between the developer and the property owner. Now, there's been some assertions made that the city failed to communicate with the South Park Owners Association regarding this project. I have to tell you that assertion is flatly incorrect. The city did review uses, and in fact, the city received a letter from Triple J signed by South Park indicating that this proposed use was an allowed use. The idea that the city did not communicate with South Park is simply not correct. And under the city code, an indoor recreational use is an allowed use in in our regular zoning districts, and this particular PD specified it as an allowed use. So it became a principal permitted use in this PD. That was not a decision of the city. That was a request made by the developer that was incorporated into this negotiated zoning. And we properly verified the zoning. We advised Triple J, and we did receive a copy from Triple J of the letter from SPOA, which indicated their agreement that the proposed retail store and range was an approved use. Now, what happens in land use is, if a project's making changes to the exterior, say they're changing the parking, or they're changing the landscaping, or they're making a physical change to the outside of the building, an amended site development plan is required, and that's a very public process. Now, if there's only changes to the inside of the building, then only a building permit is required. Now, it's important to note there are significant differences between the city's legal rights between zoning and a building permit. When we have zoning, a property owner must show that their request conforms to all the city's guidelines, requirements. The city can impose a variety of conditions to ensure that the development meets goals, objectives, that's compatible with existing developments, and it fulfills the goals of our comprehensive plan. The difference is, with a building permit, if a property owner submits building plans that conform to the adopted building code and do not violate the existing zoning and site development plans, the city must issue the building permit. It's non-discretionary. There is no choice. A failure to issue that building permit would constitute a taking of the applicant's property under both the United States and the Colorado constitutions. Now, I've heard some things in the community where it's been suggested, well, the city could today revoke the zoning and take away the zoning. Yes, certainly council can do that. If council did do that, as your lawyer, I must tell you, you would be engaging in an unconstitutional taking of the applicant's property. When a person comes to the point of a building permit, they have in the law a concept known as vested rights. That means that they have done sufficient things in reliance upon their zoning, and they've expended sufficient money that they have a right to develop their property. In the case of Triple J, if the city were to try to rezone this property now, we would violate their vested rights. As your lawyer, I do not recommend that you do that. Now, unlike rezoning, because rezoning, as we know, it's quasi-judicial and the council has discretion, as does the staff in certain areas. A building permit is an administrative action. There's no discretion. The staff, if you meet the requirements on the plans, we can't say, well, we don't like your requirements, we're not going to approve your plans. You meet the requirements, we have no discretion. We must proceed. And once you've complied with all of the codes, all of your plans have been fully fulfilled with, the city must issue a certificate of occupancy and allow the project to open. Now, in the case of Triple J, the city received a single application for a building permit for a retail firearms sale and in phase 1 of an indoor firing range. It is very, very common for applicants to then desire to split the project into phases, particularly if specialized inspections are going to be required for one phase, because many times an applicant has financing that's dependent on certain stages of completion. There is nothing unique about the splitting of the building permit, and it is something the city would routinely do upon an applicant's request. Now, more importantly here, I think, is the real message about protecting the public safety. The city elected not to use its own staff to do these inspections. We hired International Code Council to do the plan review. And who's International Code Council? This is the entity that writes the building codes used throughout North America, not just here in Littleton, Canada, throughout the whole United States, the Caribbean. These are the folks who established the building standards throughout, as I said, North America. We also retain Code Consultants International to assist with actual inspections. Why? Because they had just finished up doing inspections of an indoor range in Lakewood. They had significant experience in those inspections beyond that of our staff. And the city did that because we wanted to make sure we had the absolute best doing the plan reviews, the absolute best experts, the absolute best people doing the inspections. We viewed this project as that important and that necessary to have that level of expertise. And yes, I've heard it was a stop work order issued on June 13th, 2018 on this project because we found that work had commenced. We prohibited any further work until a building permit was obtained, which is the standard requirement of the building code. Yes, Triple J did obtain a building permit. We also notified Triple J, A, that we would take any action necessary to enforce the stop work order, and B, we would impose civil penalties on top of the regular fees for their building permit required by the code because they had done work without a building permit. And the whole purpose of the building code is we want to bring projects into compliance. And in exactly that's what happened here. The city issued a stop work order. We immediately took enforcement action. We imposed additional penalties, and a building permit was obtained, and there has been full inspection since. Now, when we did receive the plans from the project architect, they were provided to both International Code Council and Code Consultants, as well as to staff and other public entities for review. And there was a total of 36 comments made. And we made Triple J respond to all of those. They did address all of the comments from the International Code Council. They had not addressed some of the others. We had a meeting. We insisted every single comment is addressed. Every single one. And now, there's been some claim and perhaps insinuation made where the city isn't requiring compliance with environmental or air quality standards. Nothing could be farther from the case. We are well aware of the EPA standards for these types of facilities. International Code Council is aware. They were part of the comments. Triple J will be made to comply with them fully. We are well aware of the lead mitigation standards. Those are also part of the code. Again, Triple J is going to be made to comply with them fully, even though I can tell you from, like many applicants, Triple J would suggest, well, these are very costly things. The city's position is, they're the law, you're going to be required to do it, end of discussion, that's it. Now, the consulting team from Triple J did meet all of the comments. And we then also made it clear that A, we would require certification by an architect registered in this state, that the design of the building would meet the city's noise requirements, and subsequently, as we go through a building and we're doing inspections, there would be a final inspection where there would be an actual test done with the range and operation to verify that it meets the noise requirements. Now, I can tell you, looking through the record, I've heard some suggestions where the city has not followed its own rules. We haven't followed our own permit requirements. We haven't followed our rules. I can tell you, having reviewed the public record, that's not the case. When we were approached about requirements being phased, we handled the matter properly. We responded, absolutely not. The code must be complied with in full. We actually required some additional requirements that the code was not specific about, such as exterior lighting to enhance safety. And we required a parking study and a parking analysis. Now, in a PD district, the developer has primary responsibility for parking, but we still required parking calculations because we wanted to make sure that the parking was adequate. We've also made it very clear, if there's any subsequent phases, if the city's codes changes, that will be subject to the codes in place at the time. And we will be doing field inspections like we do with any other project. The retail phase of this project is complete. It's ready for occupancy. As I mentioned, we will go through a whole series of actual physical inspections before the range is completed. And all of the inspections must be passed before we give a certificate of occupancy. And there's been some suggestion perhaps made that the city hasn't been particularly, maybe as diligent as it could be in protecting the public health and safety. I want to tell you that is, I think, absolutely wrong. Once the stop work order arose, immediately in June, we began to commence research on the city's codes. We looked at the city's codes and said, do our codes work? Are these the right codes? My office and community development have been working literally on an ongoing basis. We've gone through drafts of revisions to the codes. And in fact, we're going to be coming to you on November 27th to talk about this very topic, both revisions to our zoning code and how we might regulate gun stores. And it needs to be noted, there's more than one licensed federal firearms licensee in the city of Littleton. While I can't disclose the exact addresses, I can tell you that we have between 20 and 25 licensees, I would estimate, in this city. So we're looking at all of that. And we've been looking at it. We've been going through each of these items and being able to come to you on November 27th with a presentation and with recommendations to how council might approach this. And all of your departments, both the city manager's office as well as police, community development, and building safety, all of them have been very involved. They've all worked together. This has been a cooperative effort, and I give credit to the city manager because he's made sure the resources from his departments were all involved to work on this. And we are going to recommend the best things to you that we can as a professional staff for you to consider on November 27th. But I want to let you know, having reviewed this public record, record, I am satisfied as the city attorney of the city that your staff has done everything within its legal duty that it could do to handle this project in an appropriate way. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions the council might have.
City Manager.
Mayor, I don't think I have anything to add beyond what the city attorney's kind of shared here. I will say that, I think one of my, personal goals, and certainly that of the department directors, to do everything we can to try to communicate where things are at. What's really kind of unusual about this is that it's a building permit. It's not like other kinds of development that the council sees. And so I have been trying to poise this organization to be more transparent with the information we've got. It's a work in progress. Council knows that, we didn't even have the systems in place to do this until a couple of years ago. And so we have been trying to put more information out there. I think, too, the other thing that worth noting is that, my office has and certainly community development and city attorney's office has a high degree of communication with SPOA and, quite honestly, many other associations within our city. We rely upon them to create the kinds of relationships here at a deeper level that, cities tend to struggle with on the kind of the day-to-day operation. In the case of SPOA, I think it's one of the best relationships that, quite honestly, we have. I've had a fair amount of conversation with the president of SPOA, Mike McKinnon, here of late. We all know that there is a fair amount of litigation going on here with multiple parties, and it's put us in an awkward position about what we can and cannot do. And I think that some of the questions and issues that are raised by the residents are all legitimate. And I think our challenge is trying to figure out when is the appropriate time that we can do this to make sure that the litigation plays out and does not put the city in a awkward position. Currently, we're not being sued. Currently. And I think I've shared with you and certainly the city attorney just about kind of where we are at with issues like that. I think what's really also awkward here from my view is that, we obviously have a lot of residents who have a lot of concern about what's going on, and legitimately so. At the same time, we have to balance the other half of the equation, which is Triple J themselves. And we have a legal responsibility to make sure that we protect their private property rights. And it puts us in a very odd position at times. So again, appreciate everything and all the concern. I think we're trying to do our best to share as much information as we can at the moment. And we're hoping that the conditions change in the near term where we actually can have more of a conversation. Today, it's a little limited by the litigation.
Thank you. Thank you for coming back in. Okay, we're going to proceed with the agenda at this point. Consent agenda. Ordinance 43. This is an ordinance on first reading, deleting Chapter 7 of Title 11, Capital Facility Impact Fee, and adding Chapter 14 of Title 1, Land Development Fees. Resolution 70 is a resolution adopting the City of Littleton's official zoning map. Resolution 73 is a resolution adopting the principles of sound financial management. Resolution 74 is a resolution adopting the 2019 fee schedule. Resolution 69 is a resolution approving the South Curtis Duplex Subdivision Final Plat. Resolution 66 is a resolution authorizing the city through the Historical Preservation Board to act as a reviewing entity for the State Historic Preservation Income Tax Credit Program for qualifying rehabilitation projects under Colorado House Bill 90-103. Resolution 68 is a resolution approving a final plat for Stevenson Porsche located at 5500 South Broadway. Resolution 75 is a resolution to appoint Mayor Debbie Brinkman as council delegate to the South Metro Cunningham Fire Rescue Authority. Resolution 72 is a resolution authorizing an intergovernmental agreement between the City of Littleton and the Colorado Department of Transportation for the installation of a dynamic lane assignment system at the intersection of South Platte Canyon Road and West Bowles Avenue. Resolution 71 is a resolution authorizing an intergovernmental agreement between the city and the Colorado Department of Transportation for reimbursement of costs associated with the replacement, design, and construction of the bridge at Rio Grande Street over Slaughterhouse Gulch. And ID 18-362 is approval of the October 16, 2018 regular meeting minutes.
Mayor?
Yes.
I move to approve A through K.
We have a motion, do we have a second? We have a motion and a second to approve consent. Almost made it through.
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion carries unanimously.
Okay. Next, we have nothing under general business, so we'll go to our ordinances on second reading and public hearing. Ordinance 39 is an ordinance on second reading to be known as the annual appropriation bill, adopting the annual budget for all municipal purposes of the City of Littleton, counties of Arapahoe, Douglas, and Jefferson, State of Colorado, for the fiscal year beginning January 1, 2019, and ending December 31, 2019. And this is a public hearing, so we'll hear from staff first. And Tiffany, is that going to be you?
Yes, good evening, Council. Before you tonight, you have 4 ordinances that are actually related to the budget in one form or another. If Council is okay with it, I have a presentation that kind of covers all of them in one, so we don't have to do 4 separate presentations for items related to the budget. So as the mayor mentioned, we have Ordinance 39, which is the budget appropriation. We also have Ordinance 40, which is the establishment of the mill levy. Ordinance 42 is the Littleton Stormwater and Flood Management Utility Enterprise Budget, and Ordinance 41 is the Littleton Sewer Utility Enterprise Budget. Just a couple of things I'd like to touch on related to these ordinances, specifically the mill levy. The mill levy is an ordinance that actually sets the mill levy for property taxes for the following year. The ordinance that you have before you sets the mill levy at the 6.662 mills. What I want to note is dependent on the election results this evening. Next year, when the mill levy comes forward, if the election results are a yes for 7B, then the mill levy that will be proposed will be a 2.0 mill levy as opposed to the 6.662 mill levy this year. Just want to kind of iterate that with council and those who might be watching. The reason that the stormwater and the sewer utility budgets are separate is they are actually a Tabor enterprise, and so we're required to adopt those budgets separately from the budget appropriation for all other funds. So I just wanted to kind of highlight that for you. Just a quick highlight on the budget sessions. We had 3 wonderful evenings with council and staff and citizens present at the 11th, 12th, and 25th of September meetings. A lot of discussion, a lot of information, and I think the one thing that we want to highlight is that in 2019, we will be contracting with South Metro Fire for fire services, and that's regardless of the election results this evening. During the budget sessions, there were 23 policy questions that council considered. One large one is related to employee compensation and benefits. Included in the 2019 budget is a net increase of 2.7 FTEs. A couple of those are public works engineers, increase in the prosecutor hours, a code enforcement specialist, a graphic design increase in hours, an increase in the police accreditation administrator. And then we have a couple of reductions in FTEs that were discussed, the one in information technology and also one in the fleet department. We have a number of software system enhancements over the next year. We have a court system that's going to be implemented. And then we also have a lot of Littleton Center building improvements and overall infrastructure improvements. And then the one thing notable is the continuation of the vision to comprehensive plan for the city. We did have 3 policy questions that have a budget proviso. One is related to creating a mission and values-based organization. The other is related to the comprehensive plan. And then the last one is related to the corridor master plan. And the budget proviso is that before any of those 3 items are expended in 2019, the scope and deliverables will be presented to council. A couple of fee changes for 2019 in the sewer fund. We are going to have a 3% increase in the sewer utility fees. In addition, we're going to have a 3.3% increase in the storm drainage fees. We did increase or change the development review fees related to planning and engineering, and that was one of the items under consent earlier this evening. The one thing we also did is we eliminated the fire impact fees, since we'll be contracting with South Metro and not providing for future fire capital. We will eliminate that fee. And then we revised the cost of services study that was, or the impact fee study, excuse me, that was conducted related to transportation, revised that for a number of projects that are in the pipe or in the future, and we increased the transportation impact fee.
Yes, I want to suggest that. Mayor, Council, I just wanted to mention, for purposes of this, it's because these are all interrelated, if the council wishes to combine the public hearings and take all that testimony at one time, that certainly would be within the council's prerogative to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted to touch on a couple of changes from when we did the budget sessions and to what you have before you. One is the city is not receiving a federal grant related to the USCIS program, and council did decide to go ahead and fund that program for the next year. So we did have to reduce some revenues that come in related to that, and then we also increased expenditures related to that as well. The other thing is, in reviewing the local partnership funding, council did reduce the original proposal for that. And then one additional item that was added is the digitization of documents for the Public Works Department. And those were the only changes to the general fund coming out of those budget sessions. I do want to note the projected ending fund balance in 2019 is 11.466140, 11 million, 11.4 million, roughly 11.5. Because the city's not going to be receiving the funds for the USCIS grant, we also had to adjust the grant fund. There is no bottom line change to that grant fund because grant revenues come in, expenditures go out. There is no net change in that fund. A few changes to the open space fund. Two projects were not funded, the Riders Vista area and the Hamlet Park. This actually did increase the fund balance in the open space fund by $330,000 since we won't be funding our portion of those two projects. The projected ending fund balance in the open space fund is $2.7 million approximately. I know we enjoyed 3 fun-filled evenings of the 2019 budget, so I kept my presentation short, but if you have any questions, I am happy to answer those at this time.
Council, any questions? Thank you, Tiffany. So seeing that this is a public hearing and we do have 4 ordinances, so we will, on the suggestion of the city attorney, go ahead and open up a public hearing for all 4 regarding each of the ordinances that Tiffany went through. I have the sign-up sheets, and no one has signed up to speak on any of these. Does anyone wish to come down and speak on the budget? Seeing no one, we close the public hearing at 7:21, about the same time I opened it, at 7:21. Okay, so council, any comments or questions for staff at this point? If not, I would need, let's go one at a time. In ordinance 39, I need a motion, please.
Ordinance to approve, motion to approve ordinance 39-2018 to be known as the annual appropriation bill adopting the annual budget for all municipal purposes, City of Littleton, counties of Arapahoe, Douglas, and Jefferson, State of Colorado for the fiscal year beginning January 1st, 2019, ending December 31st, 2019.
Second. Okay, we have a motion and a second on ordinance 39. Any discussion? Okay, ready to vote?
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion carries unanimously.
Good job.
Ordinance 40. Let me read it into the record. This is an ordinance on second reading establishing the tax levy to defray the cost of municipal government to the City of Littleton, counties of Arapahoe, Douglas, and Jefferson, State of Colorado for the city's fiscal year beginning January 1, 2019 and ending December 31, 2019. I need a motion. You can simply say, so moved.
So moved.
I need a second.
Second.
Ready to vote?
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion carries unanimously.
Ordinance 41, this is an ordinance on second reading adopting the 2019 Littleton Sewer Utility Enterprise Budget. Need a motion?
So moved.
Need a second?
Second.
Councilmember Driscoll.
Thank you.
Ready to vote?
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion carries unanimously.
Ordinance 42, this is an ordinance on second reading adopting the 2019 Littleton Stormwater and Flood Management Utility Enterprise Budget.
So moved.
Second.
We have a second from Councilmember Cole. Ready to vote?
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. One of the most important decisions we make in a year is the budget. And while this went swimmingly, Tiffany's correct that we spent 3 nights and a lot of discussion, and prior to that, staff spent months preparing this budget, and so a lot of work went into this, and I think that our ability to move through this process and then also to not have, obviously to have the comfort of the community in that there's, obvious acceptance of what we're doing with no public comment. I think it speaks very well to the quality of the work that we received on the budget. And so thank you, you and your staff. Greatly appreciate it.
You're welcome. We have a wonderful staff at the city, both at department level, finance level, and every level throughout the city. So
we sure
thank
do.
you.
I thought you were going to say we have a wonderful time, but.
Well, we kind of do.
Okay.
That and the
Thank you,
CAFR.
Tiffany. Yeah.
Thanks, Tiffany.
Okay, so our next item is our comments and report. City manager.
Mayor, no report.
City attorney.
Mayor, Council, the other report I have is in your agenda, and I have no questions about, comments about it.
Okay. Councilmember Elrod.
A couple of things. So one, I wanted to thank Community Development on the work that they did on the zoning map, making that much more interactive. We passed that resolution tonight, so not just Community Development, Planning Commission, and I know what it takes to get something like that done, and the accessibility of that information online, I think is great. So thank you for that. I will put it on my wall. And then just a couple of things, 'tis the season, so here we go, holidays coming and lots of different things going on. November 9th is the opening of A Christmas Carol at the Town Hall Arts Center. This is a very popular time at the Town Hall Arts Center, so get your tickets soon. And a lot of other activities going on in downtown with downtown Littleton merchants as well through the holiday season, so stay tuned for all of those activities. And then near and dear to my heart as well, November 12th, the Operation Red Wings Memorial Monument that will be presented at Berry Park for Veterans Day is at 11 o'clock. I hope people will join us in that celebration and giving thanks to those that serve, and that's all I have.
Thank you. Councilmember Fay.
I have a report on the activities of the Fine Arts Board. This Thursday is the opening of the Own and Original. This is an exploration of the concept of ritual, so that's an interesting concept. It's a juried art exhibition, and then the exhibition is open to the public from November 16th through January 6th. And then the Fine Arts Board approved the suggested location and placement of the gift from the Bega people of Rue and Baby Rue. So that's the kangaroo has a home now in Bega Park. And this is through the Sister City Exchange with Bega in Australia. And the Rue and Baby Rue will be placed with other items that are a product of that exchange. Thank you. Councilmember Schlechter.
I attended the museum board meeting last night. A report from the director of the museum was that attendance up to year to date is just under the all-time record of last year, so it's like another good year here. The Harvest Festival attendance was up by about 1,000. This was the best pumpkin harvest in quite a few years at the museum itself. They had almost 2,000 pumpkins grown there at the museum. Very few of them were purchased, only the extra large pumpkins that weren't grown there. Upcoming event at the museum is the Holidays Evening, which is on Sunday, December 9th. And one other tangential related issue or event is the Angelo's Taverna will be one of the 13 restaurants to participate in the Colorado Uncorked, which is the Colorado Governor's Cup wine tasting this Thursday, 7 o'clock at History Colorado downtown. It's the winners of the statewide winemaking competition. There will be 13 wines paired with 13 restaurants. It'll be a great opportunity. I will be there. Of course. But it's great that Angelo's is going to be a part of that.
Definitely.
Partner there. So that's it.
Thank you. Councilmember Cole.
I'm freezing, sorry.
I know, it's cold.
So Kyle preempted me on the Friends of the Library Museum fundraiser. He didn't say too much about it with the Holiday Eve. They have Candelaria lighting the trail around the lake. There's caroling. I think there's always hot cider. And then depending what they get a good deal on, it might be gingerbread or cookies or whatever, but it is an incredible event and it sells out. So if you're interested, as soon as you get those tickets, do, but they'll go fast. So question or observation, request, something. In the far northeast corner of the city on Broadway, on Broadway we have this wonderful, I think we call it Tree Park, along the sidewalk, so that we have this sense of a livable community. But north, I think it's just north of Littleton Boulevard, we don't have that on the east side of Broadway. I tried to pay attention when you're driving. You don't want to pay too much attention to that. You want to pay attention to other stuff. But I think I've recently driven it a couple of times. So I'm wondering is there a way we could work with some of those businesses to get Tree Park there? I think it would add something very attractive and make us more, our image all along Broadway will extend all along what we have going south from there, because we have incredible treescape along the sidewalks. Debbie, we were on the council when we did some of that, particularly on the east side in the car dealership areas. So that's just a request. And I think I said that, but I don't think I said this yet. I attended the 3-day conference of the National League of Cities Conference on Dialogue and Deliberation, which was intended to help people, governments and other folks, think of ways that they can engage more people in the communities, and particularly the voices that we don't so often hear from. And I'm not going to write a summary of all the sessions I attended, but it was quite worthwhile. And so I'm hoping that we can continue our ways to do outreach, to try to get more people even to know that we have a city council, even to know we have a city government and city staff and whatever, but ways that they can be engaged and to help us be a more cohesive community, even though we have lots of different voices. So,
thank you. Councilmember Driscoll.
This will not be that long.
I'm sorry.
Not at all. My wife and I are looking forward to the Candlelight Walk. Just reminding all the citizens that will be on November 23rd. The parade starts at 6:30, and that will head right down Main Street with ending at Bowles Park with the lighting of the Christmas tree. So hope to see you down there.
Thanks. Councilman Valdez.
I attended the Littleton
the North Littleton Promise event, as well as, it was well attended by city folks. We had the Planning Commission Chair was there, Mark Renicky. We had former Mayor and Council Member Pat Cronenberg, and then we had some other folks around the table. So it was a great event. I think what I learned or reinforced from attending that event, some of the speakers they had there, is that what that organization does for the northeast part of Littleton is it really provides opportunity for a lot of kids that would not have opportunities to do things like focus on sports or focus on academics. And many of those kids end up going on and learning a trade or going to college. And again, it's one of those things we can't really measure. That Littleton Promise is what helps that to happen, but it does make that happen for a lot of kids, and they've been doing that now for many years. And one of the things it also does is it helps out that neighborhood to be a more stable neighborhood, well-behaved kids. And I just can't tell you how I feel about that organization. I know the council has supported it this year with some contributions too, so thank you, council. That's it.
Okay. Just to let council know, we had originally the task force working on the priorities for open space, parks, and trails. We had originally hoped to be able to present at the November 14th study session kind of where we're at and get kind of input from council at that point. Due to scheduling, we're going to end up doing that November 27th. So it'll be the last meeting, last study session in November. And we'll have a presentation from Will Singleton, who's doing the facilitation, and we'll have some information to share with council and expect to get some comments back as we move forward on that. But we've had our first meeting, and it's a real good group, and everybody's really engaged, and I think we'll come out of it with some real good output. Other than that, I don't have anything. I will say, looking at the unofficial election results, it appears as though the voters are approving our South Metro district, moving into a district with South Metro. So at this point, it's updated on 7/14. That's the latest one. And it's about a 2,500 vote difference in favor of. So unless there's a huge bunch of votes that didn't, I think on behalf of myself and hopefully council, that we appreciate that this was a very, very big decision that the council made, and it was a very big ask that we asked of our community, and the community has responded, and we're very much appreciative of that, and looking forward to moving forward on that. So thank you very much. Looks like a lot of people did vote, so that's good. We'll continue to watch the results. A lot of state issues that are of real concern also. So seeing no other business, we are adjourned.